Okay, and the bell's ringing. I guess it's 7 o'clock. Let's get going. You want to open up the Zoom window?
It is, it's open.
Nobody's coming in?
Nope,
Okay.
that's
I
it.
was going to do some at home, but I figured it never worked, so.
Who trained you?
I will guarantee that it works today.
Well, next meeting.
Well, the first item on the agenda is to identify a volunteer to record minutes, and we have a paid volunteer, Katie Schlafly, who's a junior in college and a town resident, and she's, I hope I'm not telling too much about your life, Katie. She's between semesters in college, and she's an English major, and when I heard that she was an English major, I thought, that's the person I want to get to do the minutes. So she's going to do the minutes for us, and I don't have to look around the table and have you all stare at your hands when I say who's going to do the minutes.
Thank you, Katie.
All right, so we should review and approve the minutes of February 6th and February 18th. Does anybody have any corrections? If not, it's a motion to approve. Your second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve both sets of minutes. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Okay, good. So we're ahead of schedule, only for a minute or so. I just want to, the agenda has changed. The agenda that you may have in front of you says that Ryan Brown and Craig DeSantis are coming, and they are not. Craig had an operation on his knee, and Ryan said he'd prefer to come with Craig. And so the revised agenda went out, and
Yeah,
Chamber of Commerce.
I've got it revised one.
yes, that sounds, yeah.
Anyway, the Chamber of Commerce is coming at 7:30. So basically what we have to do tonight is talk it all over, talk over what we heard, what we think what direction it turned us toward or away. And then hear from our staff about what they've been up to the last few months and what information they have. So I guess what I'd like to do with the agenda is just to begin with a discussion about the forum and give everybody a chance to summarize what they heard. And I'll begin that with CJ, because he spent a lot of time in the office compiling summaries of all those big charts that we had. And I want to congratulate you on doing that. I think I probably cynically observed to you before the exercise that in all the times I've been in meetings where people had put up big white pieces of paper, I never saw anything come out of it. All the stuff that got written down disappeared. So this is a very positive experience for me so far, CJ.
So I have to give Chris credit. Chris actually took photos of all the sheets and he transcribed them all into a Word document.
Thank you,
and organized
Chris.
them. So the mess I made out of it is what we'll talk about if we want.
Okay, yeah, well, why don't we begin the discussion of the forum with your summary of the SWOT
Yeah, and
exercise?
I think overall, I mean, at least compared to the previous meetings where we were talking about what we thought we attend, I mean, from my perspective, that's very positive. I mean, obviously, it's easy to be like, oh, it would have been great if there were 150 or 200 people there. But I think based on some of the space limitations we had, it worked out. I mean, it was more like most was anticipated showed up. We had over 80 people. And given what we sort of had to work with without the cafeteria because there was the basketball tournament that day, I mean, I just anecdotally walking around listening to the groups, I mean, it's a very positive discussion. So I just want to start by saying that. I'll go into this, and then it'd be interesting to hear what everyone else has to say about what they thought about this. So what I shared with you to start was two different documents. Sean, would it be possible to share?
Here, I gotta,
So they look the same, but there's two different documents. The first is just the raw
now
results.
you should have control now.
So the first document is,
I'm not seeing anything except.
is the raw results. And that's just, full disclosure, everything that was written on those charts, organized by strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Those are all organized on the one that's sort of more open-ended. This is the one that, so we made an attempt to try to summarize and clean this up a little bit, and we could go further with that, but what did we hear? For an open-ended event where we didn't give a whole lot of direction beyond, basic questions, what were people really focused on? And you'll, oh yeah. Why don't I can't, I've got. So I went through and tried to, this isn't exact based on the different sections of the master plan, but tried to look at what are the topic areas we are hearing about and to condense all of those comments into those different areas.
One more chair. Oh, Bobby.
But we're looking at that. It's basically,
So it's, yeah.
Bobby.
Three tables pretty soon.
It's great. So many people are here.
Yes.
Okay, CJ.
All right, we ready? Okay. So you don't have to worry about what I just handed out because what we're going to talk about is going to be up on the screen. But just so you can take home and look at your leisure, and I can share these digitally, but there's one set that is simply raw results based on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats of everything that was written on the sheets during that part of the forum. This is my first attempt to try to organize it, to try to get an idea of, at least starting out, the people who were there, like what were they really concerned, what were their focus areas? And you can see there's certain areas like related to the master plan that really rise to the top. At least with overall. So the under strengths, economic development and municipal services and infrastructure really rose to the top. So from a strengths perspective, a lot of discussion on the wide array of restaurants in town, downtown as a shopping district, and other services that are provided downtown. From a municipal services and infrastructure perspective, a lot of feedback, positive feedback related to emergency services and police, the schools and the library, as well as, there were a lot of responses related to just general, specifically related to open space and recreation, but some things of note. Talk throughout this of potential bike trail development. Agriculture seems to rise to the top. Under natural resources, some more basic comments. Laurel Lake came up a few times throughout this, more specifically. Under transportation, from multiple groups, access, highway access clearly stood out.
What does that mean?
Highway access?
Yeah.
Just that you have an on-ramp and off.
Oh, that we have highway.
That you have, yeah, so it's a strength.
It's not walkability.
Yes, but someone specifically said walkable. So I did want to make sure we called that out as a you could say transportation or community character. But access to the highway. Each, there were only 4 groups, right? 4 groups? Yeah. Or 5, sorry.
I don't know.
Yeah, so out of 5 groups, 3 specifically talked about access to the highway. Community character. This was really interesting. I stopped trying to summarize this after a while, but people just had really positive things to say. Tight-knit community, small town communities, community spirit. Actually, this came up a few times, which I thought was an interesting comment, is that people identified Lee as being centrally located. Maybe that's just a common idea, but I just thought that was interesting that people sort of jumped right to calling that out.
I think that is a central feature of our town. We're right in the middle of the 2 ends of the county.
Yeah.
We have the highway access. We're known as the gateway. I think that's a core that we all think about in how we view our town.
Came out. Access to culture, historical heritage. I didn't try to summarize these much just because I thought it was interesting. Low crime rate, small town charm, friendliness. It was a very positive reaction. This is actually the longest of all of them, but it's one that it's just interesting that people were so positive. Not that I wasn't expecting them to be positive, but the general theme behind this is there's a lot of positivity towards the town, at least as a strength. Come down to, and if anyone has any questions to this or comments, feel free to. Says that's sort of where population and demographics, you see some of that coming through. A lot of people identifying a lack of opportunities for young people, lack of diversity. I guess that could mean a whole number of things. I think you could read through that if what you want, but that could mean it's probably to age, race, ethnicity, would be my guess. Calling out the lack of affordable and workforce housing. Economic development. This was sort of like there was a heavy response here, largely related to empty storefronts and vacant, abandoned buildings. Municipal infrastructure, again, it was a good mix of people that these types of things come up, because we're seeing it throughout the Berkshires, but it's interesting that people are calling this out, just the number of vacancies and lack of volunteers. Not to say there's a lack of quality in volunteers, but just I think what we're all aware of that.
Certainly not here.
Of course. But the difficulties that we're having across the Berkshires right now, getting people interested in participating. And I don't think that means just in local government. I sort of, that was the comment I left in, but the other comment was specifically, and you'll see that too. If I did ×2, that means, the number of times we saw that comment appear. So it's good that people are at least aware that that's an issue. But a lot of other common themes we've heard before. The school population's going down, so shrinking class sizes, and not in a positive way, clearly, based on how that comment came up. A lot of this is clear things that I think you've all heard before.
Things to
Yeah.
and really can deal with these 4 issues.
So what's good about an exercise like this is, so there were 80+ people participating. Obviously, this isn't, it's not like a representative sample size of the entire community, but it's, we're going to talk about the survey at some point tonight as well, and the response we're getting from the survey. We piece all these things together to, make the best sort of conclusions we can. What people care about, what they're concerned about, and what we can offer as potential paths forward to, especially to improve on these areas of weakness or some of the threats that resources in the environment. Under that one, PCB dump came up multiple times from the various groups. So, but beyond that, invasive species came up. You'll see that in some of the other sections.
The zebra mussels. Yeah.
And I think people are probably focused on zebra mussels, but if it's anything like the rest of the Berkshires, there's all kinds of other invasives, like water bodies, trees and, weed invasives. There's a lot of like hardy peaweed, in forests. They're choking out, a lot of quality forests. So no one was specific. I mean, some people were specific about zebra mussels, but my guess is that there might be more behind the specific comments than that. Our transportation, where we saw multiples, truck traffic, that's condensed. So, 2 of those 3 comments specifically called out downtown with truck traffic.
Trucks coming up Main Street?
Yes. And I think just overall throughout the community, truck traffic is a concern in some of the neighborhoods. And that's where you see overall traffic. That wasn't really specific. That's something we're going to, be looking into more about what, trips per day, what kind of data the DOT has collected. But that's something we'll just want to keep an eye out on.
Did you ever see the study that Bob McIntosh did where we run the trucks along the street behind Main Street?
I don't know.
That's High Street.
High Street.
Yeah. No, not High Street. High Street's this way. No, we're talking where,
High Street's that way.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. It's
I'm thinking of where.
Railroad,
Yes.
Railroad Street.
Yes.
There's
Where
Canal.
Where the railroad is along the river.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Canal Street that kind of dead ends back there, which you get in by Lucky's, and then there's Railroad that kind of comes down and
No,
around.
so railroad is where Chris Shields' operation is and all that.
Mhm.
Chris, is that something you've collected so far? Have you seen anything about the alternative route through?
For
around
trucks.
downtown?
When was the study done? I don't know anything about
Probably
the
20
study.
years ago.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some studies that, there's also the one that went through Stockbridge. That was like 20 years ago as well. There's, I think they look at a bunch of scenarios.
Has the one been along East Street?
Another scenario that goes along East Street, how would that work?
East Street has a lot of truck.
That is true. Yeah. Because I think they go from 20 over here in Eastleigh, and then they go over the turnpike there, and then they go on East Street.
It's a main line.
The studies I think you're referring to were alternative truck routes. So it would have taken the trucks off East Street
Right.
and off of Main Street. So Canal Street was done by Bob. And then the Stockbridge Exchange was vetoed by the town of Stockbridge. That was not a lead decision,
How long ago was that?
like 25 years.
Yeah.
That's the older one of the 2 studies. And
Right.
I don't remember what the conclusion on Canal Street. Canal Street's not a big street and it's built up on both sides. So I don't know. They've talked about High Street too at one point, but that quickly came off the table.
Has there ever been any like really thorough like engineering, like not to get, so what's good about talking about this, we'll say, is these are the types of things that shine through at the end. Like, what are the priorities for the town to tackle for the next 10 years? And I mean, I think we've heard this one already, but it sounds like it's one that certainly is going to rise to the top from a transportation perspective of how the town can sort of tackle, well, there's been discussion about it, but what are the realistic options?
I think now that Price Chopper is deserted and condemned, that alternative through Canal Street is more realistic.
Yes.
So now that Price Chopper is not a viable business right now, and the building's condemned. I don't know if you've noticed.
Know
If you
that.
walk by, it's got the red circle with but at the time, there would be no exit out of Canal Street. Not easy, because Price Chopper owns that whole lot. So now that that is on the market, I don't know if that would be more viable than it was when that study was done.
You should also say that Stockbridge is a different animal and looking for more collaboration today.
Oh, not on that issue, though.
No, I don't think on
Not
that.
on that issue.
I'm merely
Well,
saying
yeah,
on some issues.
Definitely.
Yes,
And
yes.
I would also say that we talked about Riverwalk, and I understand the state is now funding Riverwalk along where the bridge is, where Meg bought the garage and all through into the Marble building that Lee Bank remastered. So wouldn't it be marvelous to want to recapture our riverbanks?
Well.
And to be able to, I want to to swim in my river. For God's sakes, that's my goal. I want to swim and I want to boat down it safely without eating PCBs or eating meat. And I think the state is now ready. I also want to make another statement. You know, you may have seen that Maria Balin Power was appointed Undersecretary of Environmental Justice, which is pollution and all the things that we suffer from in Lee. She is very eager to make Western Mass part of her significant.
Bobby, I'm going to
portfolio.
ask you to hold this thought. We're talking about the forum and what we learned at the SWOT.
Right, but I think we need to understand the politics of today, so we take
So does
the
this have
value of
something
the
to do
forum.
with what we're talking about?
Okay.
All right, hold it, please. Okay.
Peter, if I could just ask, do you guys, is our, on your stakeholders list, is our town council on that? Jeremiah Pollard? Because he's got a lot of background information on like why the exchange is, you know, the off ramps here versus Stockbridge, like those sorts of things. So he might be a good person to reach out to.
Later, I'm gonna pass around my list of stakeholders.
Yeah.
Actually have a big question. You tell me who else you should add for
Yeah,
stakeholders.
I think he's definitely one. Yeah.
I did want to say, did everybody see the article in the Eagle about Lee being the ninth in the Northeast as one of the best towns to live in?
Top 10
Yeah,
towns.
yes. US News,
US, yeah.
USA News.
Yeah, so that was in the paper. So the part of what the positives have come to light, and I love that. Let's go forward.
Transportation, so those were the two things there were the most comments, but, you know, some other clear things that I think we're probably all aware of. You know, roads are not friendly for pedestrian and bikes in certain areas.
Right.
Lack of transportation options. I just noticed I parked right out in front of Town Hall and just sort of like walked up and down the street a little bit. And on a night like there isn't a lot going on the street. Vehicles are traveling really fast.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something like, I know, you know, the town's pursuing a complete streets policy, but, you know, part of this, when you see items like this, it's really taking more of to making street and bike safety improvements throughout the town. And that's sort of like low hanging fruit because that's something that there's still funding from the DOT to take on. Some other things that I didn't have good spots for, but, you know, a few people, one person commented on lack of mental health support available in town, lack of special attractions. On to opportunities. I think this section really had a lot of feedback. So it's clear all the groups spent a good amount of time with this. This is one where you see more hits under like land use and zoning related. Trying to take advantage of this village center that you already have, a mixed use downtown. In economic development, a lot of feedback about types of businesses, types of uses people like to see in town. And really, you know, some comments about taking advantage of tourism and, you know, the traffic of tourists passing through town, especially coming off the municipal services and infrastructure. A community gathering space. This came in, you know, talking about specifically a community center, but cultural space. Actually, I left that one separate. But a lot of feedback about there needs to be more community gathering space or more spaces for the community to gather in town. Typical things that sort of one interesting one. It was probably a government related person. Wrote maintaining town employment with more attractive salaries. An opportunity. Open space and recreation. A lot of hits on agricultural uses, preserving agricultural uses and taking advantage of that. Multiple hits on a bike trail. One of them was specifically bike trail along the river. There was one comment where I just don't understand what that meant. No $ to WM.
What?
So,
Western Massachusetts.
oh. Okay.
We're starved.
Okay, that, well, so that joint, there was another comment about that, so I will move that.
To whom?
No money
Western
to
Mass.
Western Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, very good.
and we're not even,
Massachusetts place?
well, that's
West
sort
of
of,
Worcester.
that's sort of part of the,
Worcester is part of New York.
yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
Come on in.
you're absolutely right. We
A
don't,
master plan.
Master plan.
nothing is
Hi,
swept.
Jen, come on in.
You're here for 7:30, you're fine.
Okay.
That's sort of part of the joke though about the Western Mass.
Okay.
that We're not even really, nobody knows we exist.
Yeah.
On the
No.
eastern side of the
Well,
state,
no, I
they think
don't.
Western Mass starts at Worcester and ends at Springfield or,
Right.
you know,
No,
whatever.
I just feel silly for not reading through that. Because
Yeah.
I looked at it a few times, I was like, what is?
What's this mean?
Get that for sure.
And we'll be with you in just about 5 minutes, okay?
So I'll go through threats, just some of the interesting things that sort of popped out. Multiple comments about ensuring that aesthetics are preserved, especially related to new development. And again, this is threats. Aging. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the loud music question. I wasn't sure if that was like someone was concerned about a West Stockbridge situation with some of the complaints.
They
related
were
to
worried about the music or they wanted to see more of it?
This
they're
is a
saying it's
threat, so.
So I wasn't sure what that was about.
That's a,
Yeah, I don't know anyone who has.
it's interesting.
And so population demographics, again, hitting on an aging population, overall decrease in population, lack of opportunities and attractiveness for young people. Housing, again, like the typical things that we've all heard about, lack of available housing, lack of, that there's not any diversity to the housing choices in town. Economic development. One person didn't like the cannabis odor. Two people commented on lack of opportunities in town. The rest of these are pretty straightforward. I'll sort of come down though to natural resource environment. This was sort of one of the heavier commented sections, threats throughout the groups. And again, that issue with invasive plants and insects, preparing for climate change, hotter summers, not as much snow, and then multiple types of PCB related comments. So
Multiple types.
of PCB related comments. So 4, just having issue with the PCB dump. 1 comment about PCBs in the reservoir, and the reservoir needs testing.
Probably in
Related to
Woods
dump-
Pond, would that be probably Woods Pond, do you think?
Well, if it's reservoir.
No, that's not
Reservoir,
reservoir.
that's where your drinking water is coming from. I can't.
It's not gonna.
Well, they're asking that it be tested.
We actually are, so we are testing that water, establish a baseline. We're going, yeah.
Did you start that already?
That test hasn't begun, but it's it's moving. We reached out to Tim Gray's, who he used, because they had some testing and they done. And
Doing testing
We're-
for PFAS, all PFAS.
PFAS by state law, we have to test for. And last July, we came up no PFAS out of the
Yay.
reservoir or anything. So we don't have to worry about that at the moment. And we don't believe there's PCBs, but we'll know whether there are or aren't in
Are
there.
you testing for heavy metals? We should. It's not very expensive to do, but it's
Yeah.
very important because when we did the testing at Mass MoCA, we not only found PCBs, but we found heavy metals throughout the site. And it's a brownfield site, which the state had not included heavy metals
Mhm.
at that juncture.
Right, so I'd have to just look at what, what DEP sort of,
I think they've been
requires
testing
our
for
testing.
lead and copper for
Yeah,
30 years.
yeah.
I think.
Cadmium. for
yeah,
sure.
I'm sure there's
I don't know
other
what-
things that they
I don't know what
test
that
for
is.
us. So we can look into that,
All public water
Yeah.
supplies, there's heavy testing all the time
And-
for a lot of the.
And actually, because we have surface water, we're more regulated than
Right.
other towns that just are groundwater, so.
So I have a question about the
Yeah.
PCB comments. So there were certainly some comments against the PCB dump,
Yes.
but how does that relate to the comments against PCBs sitting in the river now? Were there as many comments against the risk in the river or more
No.
about the dump, would you say?
The focus was the dump.
Okay.
And then this one, I mean, it was only one comment, but it's something we've heard before, and it's been publicly heard before, the number of dump truck trips through town and what'll happen.
And one other question for you. Do you know what
Sure.
paper mill dump refers to?
I do not.
That's in South League behind me paper.
The one there,
Yes.
there's a couple, there's a few then, really. 'Cause
Yeah, there's also the one up on, yeah, on the old road.
yeah, that's a Schweitzer dump. And then there's one actually up on Forest Street too.
And there was one where the outlets were built,
Mm.
which is partly why that got
So-
all of
And I-
the
and let me-
permission.
I didn't even know about most of this, but it's
Yeah.
good that we identify this, yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of the paper mills had like slurry ponds too. That's what I know. Great.
And we had dozens of paper mills in town.
Yeah.
So the sites are like scattered.
Those dumps that you know about, if you guys could let the MV
Yeah.
know, because I don't think we can do those.
Okay.
So,
Is this a good place to break?
I think this is a good place to break, but overall, there's a lot of, obviously some of this is not precise, so it takes some reading between the lines, but a lot of good feedback, a lot of things that you maybe anticipated seeing in responses, but some things that really shine through. And one of them was, overall, this isn't to be dismissive that PCBs aren't an issue, but there was a lot of focus on positivity and moving forward. So that I thought that was a good sign, at least for the.
So to continue this after we hear from Jen, do you want to spend a certain amount of time with the second handout then too, or? do you-
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is, depending on how much time we have left, because I really want to hear part of doing this is,
I just want to know if you want time for this.
yeah, I think we should come back. I don't need to talk anymore about it, but I'd still like to
Okay.
hear what the rest of the.
All
group
right,
has
so
to
what
say
I,
about
what I think then next we'll do after Jen is we'll go around the table and I'll ask for a first volunteer and then we'll go clockwise after that. And I just want to hear what your recollections are and what your feelings were about Forum and what you learned and what you came away with. But before we get to that, I want to introduce Jen Knock, and I would ask you four on the other side to sort of belly out a little bit and make room for her. Come up to the table.
Please come closer.
Jen is the Executive Director of the League Chamber of Commerce. And Jen, I can't give a better introduction to you than that because I haven't got your resume.
So I am the director of the League Chamber as well as the Lennox Chamber. I came on Lee in September, like 3 days before Founder's Day, so this. And so, yeah, so I haven't been here that long, so I don't know how much, specific information that I can add, but I can certainly, talk generally and sort of anecdotally, but I can also, send out like a survey to the businesses if we come up with questions here that you want
So-
answers to specifically, but.
We have a survey. I think that would be a great idea. We have a survey that's still outstanding. I mean, it's still out there. It's on the website, on the town website. And there are paper copies for people who can't do websites, but I think your people can probably. do websites.
Yeah, I mean, I can put together though or I could, craft it so that it's a Google survey coming just from the chamber. They may be a little bit more, may respond better. I don't know.
Well,
I don't
do what
know.
you think. I would appreciate it if you would advertise to your people that we do have a survey existing. And then do whatever else you think. is
Okay.
appropriate.
I can do that. I
But
can send that.
give
out.
us- give us what-
Okay.
What you think you know, the little time you've had to observe the businesses. Are they happy here? Are there things that they wish were true that aren't true? Are they, happy with being near the interstate, the Mass Pike? Are they unhappy with the tax rate? I'm just giving you possibilities. here. What do
so-
you hear in the talk when they get together over cocktails.
Okay, well, I mean, the towns, they're so different. Lenox is totally a tourist town. And Lee is not that. Lee is sort of like a pass-through for tourists. And I think
I'm not
that,
sure we would all agree with that.
I'm telling you from my perspective, like
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
you know what I mean? This
This is how you get to Lennox.
it's the gateway, but that's why I'm
Okay,
going to
all right.
market it as a town, I think it's a great, the way I see it as marketing and going forward and what I'm really pushing is that it's a great place great base to have your Berkshire vacation. It's a very, welcoming, still functioning town and, like a real town. Lennox is, it shuts down basically when Tanglewood closes. It's like you can't have lunch anywhere except for Lowe's, that kind of thing. It's very different.
Or Zing, or
Or-
Ulta.
No, they don't serve lunch,
Yes, they do.
just Zinc, not Ulta.
All right, let's keep going.
So, these are the differences as I see them and the things that I hear from the visitors that are coming in. I think the businesses here, I think in Lee, they got particularly hit harder from the pandemic. It really hit them hard. We saw it was a really hard push to get member renewals this year. And according to Phil Smith, who's been with the chamber and, town historian and all of these things, he said every time there's like an economic setback, we see the numbers slide at the chamber. And it's less so that they are disenfranchised with the chamber. They just can't part with the $300.
How many different businesses are?
Now we have about 60 members, which is not a lot for, I think there's 200 businesses in town.
You have industrial members?
A couple.
Men-
Yeah, we have BSM and we've got.
What's that?
Berkshire Sterile, yeah.
Manufacturing and, not Boyd. Yeah, it doesn't serve them, even though I think that, you know what, I have to talk to Stephen directly. I
should.
know him
You
and I
should.
think that just being supportive of the town, he would do it.
That's what I told him recently. And I
Yeah.
think you should follow up.
Yeah. So I think that people that are here, the business that are here, they love their businesses and they love being in Lee and they made a choice to be in Lee. I think that in terms of being near the interstate, again, they chose to be there. I mean, Dave Ryle moved his liquor store from over here, to where it is across from the Starbucks, which he was there before the Starbucks, just to capitalize more on all of the people, driving on the pass-throughs of that road. So, there's the new restaurants, the Burmese restaurant and the Winton Roses. They've been doing great. They've been gangbusters. But yeah. So what else?
Nothing really comes up when you all get together about
We
the
haven't
chief
really all
complaint
gotten.
in Lee is, we wish they would do X. And there's nothing like that you can think
I
of.
mean, right now, so the chamber was in such flux before I came because Colleen retired and they had hired someone. And so right now we've just been trying to keep the boat afloat. So we haven't had, I've had like a tri-town mixer with chamber members. So I've had a lot of people come to Lennox when we posted something there. So this is something that I found interesting. Berkshire Bank is not a member this year. They're not a member in Lennox either. New regional person came in and across the board, she's like, we're just not spending money on chambers. And I said to the manager here at the local branch, I just said, you're going to be the only bank in Lee that's not a chamber member. And she said, I hear you, but this is, mention this to my manager. But that's sort of their corporate mandate. And then if you get people that are smaller businesses, like I said, that just can't part with $300 at this point, they don't see the benefit of it, which is my job to educate them on the benefit of that. So again, coming off of the pandemic and then a bumpy year for the chamber, you know, there's a lot of rebuilding that I have to do.
I hope you don't mind, but I heard secondhand something attributed to Colleen Henry. She was, I don't know, my wife told me about this yesterday. She was somewhere where my wife was, and somebody mentioned that Lee is now one of the top 10 towns to live in the United States. And Colleen's comment was, yeah, I'd like to think that I had something to do with that.
Oh, yeah,
I think she did, actually. The
right.
flowers and all
I
that
don't
stuff, yeah.
I don't know, I was taking credit for it.
Oh.
But it's but that's, things like that, I mean, geez, you can't buy PR like that. And so that's the kind of thing that you just kind of get out. I mean, the information booth is very active when it's open.
Yeah.
I was only there for October, and constant flow of people. Of course.
And
it's
you
very
man
busy
that, or
time.
you staff that with volunteers, right?
Volunteers are there.
And are there enough volunteers? Or
There are, yeah.
Good.
And they're very dedicated, and it's great. I think it's you know, I think it's so great that it's staffed by volunteers, and the location of it, and we're busy planning, you know, getting all the plans in place for events that are happening, you know, as soon as the snow melts and stays melted. But you know, the farmers market will be back. We're trying to get another art fair here, and you know, there's stuff going on. So all of those things help the businesses, because you want people to come into town, to downtown, and hang out, like be here and walk around, and you know.
Right. Any questions? Ken?
Oh, it's the downtown area that worries me the most, you know, especially now, because just and tourism down
For
there.
sure.
And it's such a short season. Or like the survey, I'm not sure if you should be asking the same questions that we did in the community. I think it's vital to ask the individuals, especially the small businesses in town, what they feel they need to grow their businesses. Because I think it's going to be tourism, because that's what they're talking about. They need more people. And it's just what you said. I mean, we don't like to think it here. We are a tourist destination. That's what we need to be. You know, we need people.
Yeah, you need to give them a reason to stay in town and shop, and you know, but there aren't that many shops really that would appeal to tourism, right?
Well, so the industry, the
Except for
business,
the outlets.
we may have to have different business. You know, and that will just automatically happen.
It does.
Some will be viable and some won't. Of under 6,000. We're not doing anything to grow that population. So with 200 businesses, to expect a downtown to survive without some positive action, bringing people in, it's not going to happen. We're going to kill our downtown. So now I think the critical in this, because people have the advertising dollars.
Mm-hmm. There's no advertising. There's very little advertising. And so, I mean, even with the increase from the rooms tax, I mean, I mean, I think we have a $6,000 advertising budget. That's not an advertising budget.
Some money allocated to the chamber at some time for promoting the town of Lee, was it?
There may have been, but I can't say right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we get a good amount of money from the town. It's close to, it's probably half of what from the, for Lee.
Mhm.
We're at $62,000, and then there's another 12,000 that's to be allocated to the flowers and the landscaping, that kind of upkeep, which,
Is there any collaborative marketing we could do with your two towns?
like I said, it's such a different beast, you know what I mean? And we have, yeah, I mean, I have to like figure that out and talk to, I mean, I have a board meeting tomorrow and I'll bring it up.
But why is it different? Why is,
Well, in terms of like the messaging, I guess it could be similar, but you know, Lennox has Tanglewood right there, you know? I mean, I think that, I mean, I'm trying to think of, you know, what I do in Lennox. All of my marketing is surrounded around the events that are there. And now we're up to something like 13, 15 events that are there. Not all run by the chamber, but there's been so many events that are brought to town, and so we collaborate with them. So, you know, that to me is like, if there's more events to, you know, what is going to drive people to come to Lee? What would be the driver?
I
if there's
think
not?
we got a lot here. Tanglewood is part of the list. I'm not sure that.
Tanglewood is in Stockbridge.
Well, I don't know for us, but probably doesn't matter. Or it's still looking for somewhere to stay.
Closer to the town of Lennox.
Yeah, and I think we're just as close as.
Well, maybe not just as close, but certainly within driving distance of any concert, right?
It is. So, you know, I don't think that we have to advertise.
The history of the two towns are starkly different. And so that's set up some different attitudes between the towns. There's, you know, Lee was the mill town and Lennox always had the money. Lennox had the mansions, had the big estates. So historically they've come, even though you're right, we're approaching, right? We both need tourism. But there is a very different feel. And if you,
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. You know,
I mean, I'm trying to.
It's-
For Lee, sort of the tagline, like, where progress converge. Because of the history of the mill towns and the libraries, the Carnegie Library, you know, all of these things, and those are the appeals. These things, the historical walking tour, that kind of thing. That's what you sell, but that's different than promoting events and, you know, specific events. So in terms of like Lennox and Lee doing general marketing, Lennox has their guide, Lee has their guide. They're similar that way. You know, you've got Founders Day, Lennox has Apple's Week.
How is the rate for intern marketing?
Yeah, no, I do know. They get, we get about 120,000 from the town.
And we put in, what, 6,000?
62.
60.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So in Lennox, we get a percentage of, it's a far smaller percentage. It's, you know, something like 3% of the rooms and meals tax. In Lee, we get 10% of the rooms tax. So that's another thing. So, and which is also a misconception for Lee. A lot of people think that the chamber's getting money from the meals tax.
Yeah.
So Kurt.
It's just the
Is that the
select
way-
board decides, I suppose. I don't know.
Is it a town decision?
Mhm.
Population of Lennox?
It's about 7,500 full-time.
Is it that big? Really? I didn't think Lennox was that big.
We're in the same.
we'll find out soon
On
enough
scale.
if we ever get our census.
I don't know. It doesn't matter, but
Any other questions for Jen? Anybody else? Hasn't spoken? Kathy, you got any
So
questions?
Jen, would you recommend to the board that as we're looking at master planning, that we think about more events or foster avenues so more events could happen?
That's a possibility. The problem is the budget is like, there's not like a dollar here or there. I'm only hired part-time because that's what's afforded. And so, you know, it all takes money to do it. So like, and I'm every hour that I'm all allotted right now, you know what I mean?
Like if you were gonna say to us, the one thing I think that would help the chamber and the whole town would be the budget.
Yeah, but there, I mean, that's all, you know, obviously as a marketer, we always say, we want more money. You know, that's what we do. I mean, I'm working with some of the events people that do things in Lenox I want my art walk person to do an art festival here. And so she would do it. It doesn't cost any money for me, except I just support her in terms of marketing, getting the word out, consumer and business wise. But like she runs the show, she collects the money. It's a little bit different with Art Walk in town because it's one of our events that we created. So the chamber collects money from that event. But I wouldn't do it that way just because I don't have the time. I don't have the man hours to, you know, and I'm doing that.
Any
So
other questions? I just would, Bobby, yeah.
Well, I was going to make an observation, and that I've been in the Berks most of my life, and I think the character of our town should be more collaborative. We've got 2 different towns in the county, 125,000 people if we're lucky. Collaborate, I think, is the underlying question to deal with these issues, to deal with your job, to deal with our work as putting together a master plan that integrates what we have and what we can do with the region.
I mean, I will say, one of the bigger issues is hiring people, which I hear across the board in both towns. And that not only, I mean, and that just comes back to the housing thing.
That you can't
You
find
can't,
staff.
I mean, I had someone post on the New Marlboro website today that they were looking for, they have someone coming in to work a seasonal job. I mean, you know, everyone's just
place for them to
borrowing and
live.
stealing, just trying to find a room.
So is it overstating it to say that the main restriction on hiring people is that they can't find a place to live nearby? Is that the main
Because
problem?
why, you know, if they can afford to live in Pittsfield, why would they drive all the way down to Lee for a job unless the job is so worth it? Do you know what I mean? I think that, yeah, people can live in Beckett, but still, it's still a long way to drive for a job.
So you're describing Beckett and Pittsfield as lower cost places to live.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think Lee is one of the few affordable towns in the Berkshires, and that's another thing why, you know, I
know some people like around my age who moved out to Beckett or Otis, you know, because it's a lot cheaper.
I know a lot of young professionals that are out that way, just because it's affordable, you can get more for your money. It's
I think the quality of life that we offer in each town is very important as well. You know, because we think of ourselves as a tourist town, we're not focusing on the 125,000 people that live in the county and that live in the region. And I think we should. We can be, you know, people drive to go to dinner, people drive to go to a concert, and we're not inviting them to come visit us because we don't have enough things to offer. So quality of life and housing, I believe, are integral.
I also think that you know, you talk about the aging population and it's retirees and people that can afford to live here, but the young professionals cannot. And then your population is not going to drop until you get those young professionals a place to live
Right.
and a space to live in. That would improve everybody's quality of life in this town.
We don't have the jobs for the either, do we?
Well, we do have jobs. The thing is, there are jobs, but they can't afford to live here, to your example. And I've heard many conversations where people are hired from out of the county. They have jobs here, but they can't
You
find
say
it
here in the Berkshires or
in the
Leeds?
Berkshires or in Lee. In
We're kind of using the words young professionals and young people
teachers.
interchangeably, and I don't think they're, you know, jobs at the shopping center.
No, I'm
are
talking
not young
teachers
professional
or,
jobs.
you know,
Yeah.
lab people, or professionals.
Middle level jobs.
Yeah.
There are a lot of jobs available.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but they
yeah.
can't find an affordable place to live.
So we sort of talked about housing, and we'll certainly return to that and spend a lot of time on it, I think. Just in conclusion, Jen, thank you very much for coming. I would expect that we're going to be at this probably another 6 months. And so if your people, you say you're going to a board meeting, I would ask you to emphasize to your board members and to your members that we're still open to comment. The names of the people on the committee, I think, are on the town website. And anybody can call anybody and bend their ear. So we hope your people will do that.
Yeah, and I just think that anything you need from the town, let us know.
Okay. Yeah. I will say in closing that, just to go back to your initial comment or your comments about quality of life, I think that there's a huge shift. I mean, it's kind of the biggest industry in the Berkshires is tourism. And I think everybody kind of needs to accept that and jump on that bandwagon. And that's what drives the economy. I mean, the reason that Lennox can maintain itself through the quiet months is because it makes so much money. It made $4 million off the tourism tax last year. 4 million just from the meals and I mean, that goes a long way for, making the town look good and being able to fix roads and things like that. So, I think that tourism, it's got to be where it hasn't historically been a driver in late, it has to be.
Maybe the old thing that I don't know if you all are hearing the same thing I was hearing, but the colloquy that you two had about historically we were Milltown. Oh, I don't see that. I don't really see it either, David. I think, I mean, I would love it if we could have mills again and factory jobs, but I don't see that happening. But I do see us much more as a tourist town.
It is, yeah.
And needing to make our way as a tourist town than I think the people who grew up here feel about it.
Yeah.
I may be wrong, Sean.
No, go ahead.
There were comments made, even recently, about school choice in Lennox and, not wanting to collaborate with us, which has happened over the years more than once. So it's not just my perception.
No, it is.
There are comments made about their school not needing to collaborate because they're getting the money for school choice. That is a very different attitude, a very different position than what Lee's in. So there's real strong attitudes about, well, we're paying the taxes in Lennox. We don't need to collaborate. We can take as many Pittsfield students or Lee students as we want, and they debate how many to take. That is very, very different than the place Lee Public Schools is in. And so even if you don't see it or feel it, there is a different attitude.
You might maybe hear what you were saying there, but we're not a mill town anymore.
No, we're not.
No, but historically.
But what we had, it was the largest paper in the nation.
Yep.
We have the history.
But use that as the tourism draw.
Thank you.
And
That's what we've got to sell.
And-
And when you have the tourism dollars come in, to make the town look better, you know what I mean? And it's vibrant, like when the flowers are, everyone covets the flowers that are, hanging up and down Main Street during the summer. That's what brings people in to want to also live here too. So like tourism, once you bring people here, there's like this whole breakdown, a percentage of people that will come back and then people that were, it's a very small percentage, but you want that small percentage of people to say, I could live here. I could totally live here. And the schools are great here in Lee, and it can be, there are tons of transplants that came from Brooklyn. They brought their families up here after the pandemic, and it was a steal to buy a house for $300,000, what they were paying for in wherever they were living. And
I think I was more addressing the collaboration between Stockbridge, Lennox, and Lee.
Yeah.
And that is a horse of a different color. Even though you're right, we need tourism. I don't know how to better explain.
Yeah, I think it's.
You do as businesses in the chamber that we do. It's always been the tri-town. We've always worked on stuff together, business-wise.
I just think it's an interesting dynamic about the tourism being driving, and we could use the historical character of this town because not just the paper mills, but there's a big church right there, and marble. I was just gonna say marble was a huge thing.
You don't want to compete with Lennox and what they have.
events and and Tanglewood and all that stuff, we
And
need
that's what we do.
our own, yeah.
We have the courthouse for all the Guthrie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's a lot of different stuff like that.
I don't
The
know
what
if it was a-
house?
It was
The
an accident.
courthouse at Arlo Guthrie.
Cookhouse?
The
Porch,
courthouse.
right here, in
Court.
this room.
This is where Arlo Guthrie had
Oh,
Alice's
yeah.
restaurant. You started, you said that Lee is a real town. That's the same words my wife and I use. And
Yeah.
I really think that that could be a theme,
Yeah.
that, you know, that it's not just a place to play or, but it's a place
Or,
to.
or the pass-through, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Pass-through.
that.
Yeah,
Because that's
yeah,
what
or
we're
the
don't
not.
like that.
Right,
Yeah.
but it's a real town where you can come and visit and get to meet people who really live here and work here and do interesting varieties of things
Where
and,
you could see yourself living. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
I mean, listen, I grew up in Stockbridge and it's like a Disneyland town. It's not real at all to me
I'm
anymore.
glad you said that. I think of it as a theme park.
Right, exactly. So to me, I mean, I live in New Marlboro and I use Lee as my main town just because Great Barrington's just whatever. So, and also like I'm just skewed north. So for someone who's been a local for, you know, this is where I like to come because it feels real to me.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Nice to meet everyone and feel free to reach out. Peter has my email. Thank you.
No, I don't, I think everyone can absorb that.
All right, so I'm going to ask us to spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe, reviewing what we heard, reviewing what CJ said, telling the rest of us what you think. Could you guys take that outside, please? Could you take your conversation outside? Okay, thank you. Reviewing what you heard and what you want to share with the rest of us. Anybody want to go first?
As an outsider, what I'll add is no one under strengths listed Moe's. And as an outsider, Moe's is known throughout the Northeast for having, like, for being like a really good quality beer bar. And so I don't know what the feelings are in town, but to me, I mean, that's a real, like, I'm smiling and sort of laughing about it, but really it is like in beer culture, it's a huge draw. It brings a lot
Wow,
of
that's
people
cool.
here.
Moe's is a big draw.
I think a lot of the
Under 40.
imbibing of alcohol goes unsaid here. And I mean, we just have so many liquor stores, so many restaurants, a lot of bars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to start, Sean?
Sure, I'll start. I guess, so what was my feelings about, I don't know, I was kind of shocked at the turnout that we had. I wasn't quite expecting that many people. I thought it was a great turnout just to start. And I'm really encouraged by this breakout here. I think there's a lot to just go through and give us just, I mean, obviously we can't address everything, but it seems clear the certain directions we need to go when it comes to like housing. You know, that's a lot of what.
Comes up a lot.
And it's this snake eating the tail, its own tail, right? People can't afford to live here and get a job, or they can't find a job that pays well enough for them to live here. Can't find it, you know what I mean? It's sort of this like, so that's an interesting thing, because that's a lot of what my generation, we left the town because there's not a lot of opportunity. There wasn't.
And there's not a lot of inventory.
Hmm.
Like, there are not a lot of houses on, and if a house goes on the market, it's gone.
Gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where
Usually somebody can afford to pay cash for it, right then.
Well, that certainly was the case a couple of years ago. I don't know, has it changed now? No?
Pretty much
worse.
the way.
And that's, I think, a big thing going forward that I look forward to working on with the town is, how do we, and I hope this Eagle Mill project is supposed to start anytime comes
Yep.
through and helps that.
Had the gates open.
Yeah. So I think that is going to help a lot of this, but you know, how do we address that housing issue? Because like I said, I have good friends that live out in Beckett and Otis and that sort of thing because it's cheaper. I mean, hands
I
down.
think when we get to the land use section, we're going to have, I think, probably have some disagreement, I would expect, about where the housing ought to be. Do we
Yeah.
want to concentrate it in the downtown close in? Or do we want to encourage more sort of single lot development like we've had for
Mhm.
the last 50 years? But anyway, anything
Yeah.
else, Sean?
No, I think that was,
Diane?
My group that I sat in, I took the notes, was very optimistic. They did talk a lot about housing, but they also talked about the empty mills. So it is, great history, but now it's becoming an eyesore. And there are rat problems all along the river that anyone who lives within a quarter of a mile knows about. So those big empty buildings that are deteriorating are a concern. And people ask what the process was. I have no idea. No,
Talking about Columbia Mill, there's still 6 pipes putting effluents into the river.
yeah,
6.
I have no idea, but I do know that,
No, we measure them, but so it's a problem.
Yeah.
Empty is a problem.
and the Board of Health hears about the rats coming out of some of these places. So it is a very different problem than our neighbors have. The big empty buildings that are rotting and haven't been used for, some of them now over a decade. So I don't know how we can address that, but that came up. One of the other big positives was the natural resources and consideration of more attention paid to our town parks. So Peter's wife helps take care, and Peter, the park across the street from where I live.
Where?
And on Orchard Street, we have
Ferncliff,
Ferncliff and Peter's Cave. It's got great history up there.
not my cave. Other
Yeah.
people.
But that's the kind of town parks. And in almost every neighborhood in town, there are town parks like that are underdeveloped.
Yeah.
And that came up partly because the person who really pushed for us to be an Appalachian Trail community was sitting in my group.
Mhm.
So not only has she worked hard for that designation, but she also brought up a very valid point that we have the other town park off of Route 20 that goes all the way over to Golden Hill. Walks over there. Pardon?
Town Forest.
Yeah, the Pinnacle.
Pinnacle.
The Pinnacle. It's the best place in town to see ephemeral flowers, if you're into that.
To
which
see
are
what?
Ephemeral flowers, they're only blossom
Spring
for about a month.
3 weeks from
But
now,
there's quite a few hiking trails. Look at, I didn't know that. And it's right by where you live.
Oh, no, I know it very well. In fact, I've been working with Linda. We just finished a whole sign mapping out the trails for
Right.
that
That's,
area and markers, and we'll be putting those up soon.
yeah, because that's kind of
Very well.
what came up in my group that I thought was really important is to really look at that. We also have the trails on Graylock Street. They're very wet and you can barely walk through them anymore. But at the top of Graylock, you can walk all the way over to the athletic fields and back in through to the high school.
The Kiwanis put those in.
I
That
don't
trail.
remember, it was supposed to be cross-country skiing, but it is so overgrown, you can barely get through there. Do you know where those trails are?
Maybe.
Yeah, they go all the way from Graylock and around. Anyway, there
Between
are
the
a
high
lot
school
of
and the cemetery.
underdeveloped natural resources,
Yeah.
never mind what's up on Stockbridge Road. That didn't even get discussed, because these small pocket forests are valuable. The piece that was donated on West Street that had that unfortunate woman
Longco.
parked there, that's another one. Longco Park hasn't been touched in 15 years. So that's something that my group was talking about. I also had 3 New York transplants in the group, and that was really
Oh,
interesting.
that's cool.
So what did they have to say? Was it
Oh,
different?
they love it here. The lack of art performing center. And I just wanted to scream about how I tried to get that auditorium to be bigger, but that's a long story. It didn't happen. So I lost. But
To fight another day.
yeah, I don't know about
What
that.
about the fighter? It's gonna be named.
She remembers everything. Anyway, I thought it could have been an art center, but at the time, the will of the committee was not the same as my will, the school committee. So anyway, they brought that up. And the other, I mean, we do have some smaller spaces that are, again,
We
underutilized.
don't even have an arts district where we would get money from the state if we did.
We
have a
do have,
council.
right,
We
the
have a
cultural
council.
council would
Yeah.
probably be the closest. But anyway, they brought that up, is
Okay.
that the performing spaces
Thank you.
are lacking.
Kathy?
So I just thought it was magnificent, the number of people that came out. And just the group discussions were fabulous. Everyone got a chance to speak, to tell us something about all those 4 categories. One woman at the end of the program came up to me and she said, well, you're missing a park in the survey. But I didn't write it down, so I can't remember what park, but I guess there's a park in town that wasn't listed in our survey because you listed all the parks. And she said, well, it's near my house. Oh, I don't remember. I should have written it down. Oh, well. And then somebody else approached me about the town purchasing their property that was next to the school. And I said, well, we've already investigated. Yeah, I said, we already investigated that. Yeah, because our, engineer told us it's wetlands, it's horrible to try to clear the land. So I said, I'm sorry, I already know that that's a no. But, there's so much to our town, and to let the people understand that our forum was just to get some ideas. We didn't want specifics about anything, just where do we go from here? This is just like the elastic clause in the Constitution, it's there, there's a foundation, but you build on that foundation. The only other thing that we talked about here, and I'm gonna just get off the subject for 3 seconds, is we talked about the property that the town of Lee owns. So I didn't know if, I just have 3 copies here, but I can email it to people. This is the land that the town owns.
Wow.
All right, and I did get that from Sarah Naven,
She's the assessor.
assessor. All right, so it tells where they're located. It tells how many acres each of these lands. I don't know if they're wetlands, floodplains, or whatever. But
Is that emailable?
yes, yeah.
Could I get that?
I can, yes, and I can
Why
email.
don't you send it to Beth and just tell her the
Okay.
committee wants, everybody on the committee wants a copy.
Yeah. So I just thought it was wonderful, and I thought, well, it's about time we knew where all this property was.
The assessor numbers on that?
I have no idea. There's something on there, but I don't.
Yeah, parcel
Yeah.
ID.
So theoretically, you can map this pretty easily.
That would be phenomenal.
So
Yeah,
Yeah. it's
and I
over
do
in,
have a map.
with,
we can do it like officially, like some of the other
Yeah.
maps.
Yeah.
You could do that visually.
Yeah.
We can
I
capitalize.
want to,
But I'd still like that.
Yeah, we'll have it. I'll send it to Beth, and Beth will send it to everybody.
I want to give everybody a chance to speak, but it's 8:15 and the staff has prepared a presentation, which I'd like to get them a chance to do. So if you could, keep your comments.
Yeah. It was basically wonderful.
Mark?
I was amazed. I had good conversation, open dialect with my group, and some interesting points. And one of the major ones that was brought out that I remember the most was the divisiveness that has split the community. Went back with Diane. I also had some transplants from the city that wanted a performing arts center as well. Other than that, it was amazing. It was a great opportunity.
Wasn't it amazing how many people were really seriously thinking about the future of the town? I just thought, and Mike,
It was fabulous.
I think that's part of what makes us a real town. Is that everybody's invested in in trying to be better, or trying to not be like Lennox or these other towns, but
No one special interest group was able to blow their trumpet in mine. I addressed the dump right off the bat and I said, this is it, one shot. And we're not here to do that. We're here to do other things.
Chris, you were there. Do you want to say anything?
Can I ask a question? What do you mean that there was a divide? What was the divisions?
Divisiveness?
Divisiveness, split the community.
How'd you characterize it?
What split?
About the dump, you mean? Yeah.
Oh, the dump.
Yeah.
Oh.
Split the community, and that's as far as we're going.
Did you want to say anything?
Some people that want to-
Yeah, I think I just went in with concerns about how it was gonna go. Whether we were gonna have any kind of turnout there. And people just kept coming in and coming in. And then I got concerned again, because I was like, oh. Oh. And
It's hard to bring it to an end, wasn't it?
yeah, but it was amazing to hear the discussion. I think I'll just reaffirm what everybody else has said. It's just the discussion was very, I care about my town, and I'm gonna let you know what I have to say about my town. And, the dump came up, but so many other things came up in the mix.
Exactly.
In the mix there too.
Jack, you didn't get to attend. You were ill. You were recovering. Oh, you,
I was really impressed with group leaders, how efficiently they organized rapid presentations. It was really impressive. I couldn't see the crowd behind you all, but it's a good presentation.
well, Sean did a lot of the work setting up the meeting, and Betsy, who's not here tonight, did the worked on the survey. And so they both deserve a lot of credit.
And whoever did the video, did you do the video actually?
Chris
Like
did Chris did the
the
presentation.
presentation, the
Yeah.
PowerPoint, or the,
But no, the video of the forum itself.
yeah, that was just CTSB came in. We just had CTSB come in. Yeah.
And, yeah, appreciate it. When I got the house in Lee 40 years ago, everybody asked me, what's it like? And I would say, well, it's like a real town. You were surrounded by Lennox and Stockbridge and all these Tanglewood, but Lee is real. And that's what I said from the time I bought the house. It's true. And we have that in our DNA. I think it's
Be our
in our
motto.
DNA. That's what Diane was getting to, I thought. You know, it's kind of different from the other towns.
So, like everyone else, it was really well set up. I was very impressed with, you did a great job, Sean. And everyone else.
I only did so much, but yeah, thank you. I mean, it did go great.
Everyone that worked on it, I think it went well. We had quite a vocal group. It was not easy, it wasn't hard for us to manage. Peter was in the same group that I was, so it wasn't difficult to get ideas from this group. They came flying out. PCB dump certainly came up. We had one person very vocal, a little bit disruptive maybe, but it is a very important point. It's got to be in the master plan. You know, we have to add it. The one thing I found interesting, just looking at the results here, if you go back and look at the master plan survey from 2099, the results are so similar. They're saying the same thing 20 years later. And if you summarize it, it seems to be a community. Everybody's so desperate to maintain that community spirit that we have. History seems to keep coming up. You know, they come from different angles, but everyone talks about, and the economy. You know, so and I think those are the three things that have got to come out in the master plan. And I think the economic portion of it will drive everything else. We heard tonight, I think, just to make that one point, I think the one thing we are missing is tourism is the industry that's available to us in Lee right now. We don't have.
I'm sorry, we're missing tourism, or we're missing?
Well, we don't really have a serious effort in managing tourism for the town of Lee. So one industry's gone away for this town, and the next one's come our way. You know, so
Sort of, but not, but.
well, it's there. It's
haphazard.
an opportunity to be
Yeah.
grabbed, right? And I think other towns have grabbed it. And we need to know those towns and how they've done that. And a part-time person isn't that, it's not going to work. You know, I think we need to have people seriously focused on tourism for the town.
Thanks, Dave. Nico, any thoughts?
I thought it was great hearing input from from everybody. I was kind of surprised there were a decent amount of people. I think I was with Chris, right?
Yep.
I think it might have just been my group, but I think the general concern for the town, everybody was kind of trying to look out for the future citizens and the people that are young here. So people like me, it might have just been my group, but I thought that was.
Thanks, Nico.
I think that's really important. Right.
I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but what I've been hearing is that it brought a sense of cohesion to us because we're able to speak out loud with each other. And, you know, you've all heard me talk about gathering. I think we need to gather each other for many different things.
I wasn't here either. I was in the bonny land of Scotland. But there's two things. One is obviously the housing for affordable housing for people, young people that are going to live here in the future, citizens. And then the other one is the history. If tourism is the industry, although I'd like to see something a little more, what you call it, bricks and mortar for industry. But then the historical commission needs members. Anybody want to go on the historical commission? Sign up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bring me your ideas.
Yeah.
I quite honestly was not involved with this meeting. I was.
So thank you, everyone, for sharing your thoughts. And I think there's a lot of consistent perceptions around what happened. I think I heard a lot of concerns expressed by several of you. I think we're getting a sense, I think, as a group, a little bit better about the importance of issues like housing, economic development. So I think it was a worthwhile exercise. I do think, though, that I don't want to over dramatize it, but I think this is the end of the beginning for this process. I think we now need to start getting down to really doing some master plan writing and thinking. And with that in mind, I've asked the staff, our two staff members, to begin to present to us, since under the theory that planning occurs based upon facts, and that you have to have the facts first before you can make decisions. I've asked them to prepare a presentation, and I guess we have about 35 minutes left.
Yeah. And I'm going to go through some slides that I realized I forgot to open. Chris?
You're not on the screen.
Yeah, if you got it.
I need to actually, I just want to actually. I also wanted to say, the moderators and the note takers, you really did it. Not that you need me to tell you this, but you did a really great job. I don't like sort of at the end, there wasn't a chance to really say that, but for that type of meeting, it went just as well for sort of how sort of in some ways may have seemed a little unorganized or open-ended. The way that came out, it was what we could have hoped for. It was a really great start to trying to get more people interested in this work. And so don't hold this against me. Creating a beautiful looking presentation